Welcome in, everybody. It's the First Call podcast for this July 7th, big weekend of racing in New York. We've got opening day at Ellis Park in Kentucky as the transfer of power at various racetracks around the country move from one venue to the next. We're wrapping it up at Los Alamitos this weekend. Del Mar still 2 weeks away. Saratoga 1 week away. Belmont's closing day will be this Sunday. So, Jeff Siegel, as I bring you in, it's a moving week, if you will, in the racing industry.
Yeah, but it's a good week because this weekend entries will be drawn for Saratoga. I can't wait to kick into that. That's going to be fun. And of course, we'll await Del Mar the following week after that. But this weekend, we've got some really good races around the country. Big days at some of the provincial tracks. I know that Prairie Meadows has got a big day for them. Delaware Park has got some good races for sure. So all around the country, there's some good graded stakes races to handicap and good gambling opportunities to be found.
We'll welcome you to Derby Day on the second Saturday in July, if you will. 4 different races for the 3-year-old colts. The Belmont Invitational Derby on the turf. We've got the Indiana Derby, the Iowa Derby, and the Los Alamitos Derby on the West Coast, all going Saturday. So 4 races within the division for the 3-year-olds. And those of you watching on video, give you a look at the stakes races that we'll take a look at. 10 stakes races in all to handicap live from Delaware, Indianapolis, Prairie Meadows, and Belmont. Of course, big races also too at Gulfstream on Saturday. The 3-year-olds in action there as well, sprinting 7 furlongs in the carryback, where we've got 3 alumni of the Florida Derby running there. Of course, again, Los Alamitos Derby. Iowa Derby is Saturday, but Friday night at Prairie Meadows, they've got a big card as well with the Iowa Sprint and Distaff. And Jeff, I want to talk about that Iowa Sprint and Distaff card on Friday night at Prairie Meadows because that's one of our big $2,000 hit and split promotions with Express Bet and First Bet. The late pick 4 on Friday night at Prairie Meadows. We've got Thursday night a $2,000 hit and split at Canterbury Park, and their early pick 4, first 4 on the card. These hit and splits throughout the month of July are going to total $100,000. So additional money into your pocket. I always say the key to betting the races is to get paid when you're right. Well, when you bet with First Bet and Express Bet during July and these hit and split promos, you're not only getting paid your pari-mutuel winnings, but you're going to split those amounts in the hit and split with each wager with other players on just our platforms at First Bet and Express Bet who also take them down. I know a couple weeks ago at Belmont Park, it was another $150 or so going into a pick 5 hit and split. Anytime you can get more cash than the pari-mutuel brethren that you're competing against, that's an advantage for the players. Be sure to take advantage of those $100,000 July hit and split promos throughout the course of the month. Again, Thursday, it'll be at Canterbury Park for the early pick 4. Friday at Prairie Meadows for the late pick 4. That includes the Iowa Sprint and the Iowa Distaff on Friday night. Saturday's hit and splits go to Belmont Park. $6,000, Jeff, in the late pick 5 hit and split on that Belmont Derby Invitational card. That's one that could pay really handsomely back to the players. We also got a hit and split on Iowa Derby night for $2,000 on Saturday at Prairie Meadows. And then on Sunday, Laurel Park's late pick 4 will wrap up the weekend with a $2,000 hit and split. So plenty of opportunities to play and make extra cash when you do so with First Bet and Express Bet. Jeff, let's get to some of that handicapping, help people out. Let's see what they can hit and split and what they can rake away from their other pari-mutuel competition. To Delaware Park we go to start the handicapping this week on the First Call podcast. It's the biggest day of the year in Stanton, Delaware, a track I love to visit. Delaware Handicap Day. That will go as race number 7 of 8. The Robert Dick Memorial, race number 6 on the card, will kick off our handicapping. Race named for the former commissioner of the Delaware Racing Commission. Who did you take in the Robert Dick Memorial, race number 6, Jeff?
Looks like a rematch here between Temple City Terror and Stan Tall. And of course, they were the 1-2 finishers in the Kirtana at Churchill Downs, which is a 1.5 miles. This race is 1 mile and 3/8, but it's essentially a marathon. And they're hard to separate. I went with Stan Tall, and I'm not a weight guy, but there's a 6-pound weight shift in her favor over Temple City Terror. They both carried 118 pounds in the Kirtana. They finished a half length apart. This time, Temple City Terror has to carry 124, 6 pounds. Maybe that'll make a difference. So I don't know. I don't have a great conviction. Stantal has more tactical speed. He should be fairly close to what projects to be a very, very slow pace, which could help. So I'm going to go with Stantal over Temple City Terror. These marathon mares, they don't have many opportunities to run at this distance. They've got to pick their spot and be right and be spot on when they do. And I do think Stantal, lightly raced with only 14 starts as a 5-year-old mare, maybe has a bit more upside than she's shown. And so I'll go with her on top.
All right. Jeff's pick in the Robert Dick Memorial, Stand Tall. Let's go to the Delaware Handicap, race number 7 on the card. The classic distance of 1.25 miles on the dirt. It's a throwback race over the years, Jeff, and some of the great mares in history have run in the Delaware Handicap. We've seen this race even in recent memories with the Songbirds and the outstanding performers of the last, decade, 2 decades in this race. This is not a vintage edition of the Delaware Handicap, but as a gambling exercise, what do you make of this field of 7?
Well, again, we got what looks to be a rematch here. Battle Bling and Miss Leslie. Miss Leslie beat Battle Bling when they met in the Obeah at Delaware. Back, that was the prep race on June 8th. Now that was 1 mile and 1/16. This is 1 mile and a quarter. They're both capable of winning. It's just another situation where who's going to bring their A game? One's beaten the other, so it's not like one dominates. Battle Bling is beating Miss Leslie, and Miss Leslie's beating Battle Bling. So it's hard to separate. I'm pretty sure that the winner, when it shakes out, will be one or the other. I'm going to go with Battle Bling slightly on top. No particular reason other than it just might be her turn. But Miss Leslie's tough. I mean, she's a daughter of Painter. She's won 9 out of 21. Perfect 2 for 2 at Delaware. You could certainly make a case for her over Battle Bling. Battle Bling was actually 4-5 against Miss Leslie last time, so maybe it's her turn. So I'll go 4 over 7. Battle Bling over Miss Leslie. It's going to be a jockey's race going 1.25 miles. They're going to try to find their spot and get to a point where they can produce their best run. I think Battle Bling has a chance maybe to be a little bit more tactical, so slight edge on top.
If you're someone who likes to travel around to the various racetracks in America and you haven't been to Delaware Park yet, whether you're an East Coaster or a West Coaster who might be coming east at some point, do yourself a favor and get out there on a nice afternoon and stay outside. The paddock area at Delaware Park is absolutely fantastic. There's a beautiful barbecue and playground area. If you want to bring kids out, throw out a blanket. I remember my daughter was in a stroller still many moons ago. We took her out there and spent a day sitting on a blanket and playing on the playground equipment. And dads can run over and make bets and watch the horses in the paddock, and you're right near the track. Just for a casino racetrack, the paddock area there has been preserved to it's as pretty as Saratoga in the paddock, and just a really nice family experience. I would highly recommend, if you've never been to Delaware Park, to try to make it out there, especially if you have kids. It's a good place for moms and dads to bet the races and the kids to have some fun too. It's a really beautiful track. Get there on a good weather day for sure. Ever been to Delaware, Jeff?
I have not, although I did have a string of horses there back in the early 80s with a young trainer by the name of Vladimir Serin. And I never got out there, and I couldn't even watch the races because, there was no internet or anything like that.
Right.
But the money was good, and I was actually in partnership with a very infamous person named Bruce McNall, who owned the LA Kings at the time. So he kind of went south. Let's put it that way. But I've seen obviously races there, and it does look like a really neat place to go racing. And I know it's a high society track way back in the day, and good races there, and steeplechase racing there too. So that's sort of on my bucket list. I would certainly like to get back there at least once to experience racing in Delaware Park, because it's sure on video, as you pointed out, when I watch it on television, it sure looks like a really fun place to be.
And the home of one of my favorite scores. 2003, we were there with ESPN doing the Delaware Handicap for a show. And I said, I've got $100 and I'm going to play on the race. And I was convinced that a Wild Spirit for Bobby Franco was going to beat Take Charge Lady. It was a short field. And I said, Charlie Hadry's got a horse coming in from Maryland who will close and pass all the plotters for third. And so they ran just like I thought, Jeff. 1, 2, 3. And it wasn't a very big field. And I thought to myself, okay, this try's going to come back like 34, $35. It paid 100 on the nose. And needless to say, my $100 straight trifecta with 100 on the nose, more than probably tripled my wages for the week working that week on the program. So I will always have a soft spot for the Delaware Handicap. Maybe you can find yourself a try that pays 100 on the nose and attack it here today, this Saturday. Let's go to Horseshoe Indianapolis, formerly Indiana Grand, formerly a couple other names, but Horseshoe Indianapolis, home of the Indiana Derby. Now, of course, this race originated at Hoosier Park, and Hoosier Park now runs just harness races. So it was transferred over to Indiana Grand, and now Horseshoe Indianapolis under the recent renaming. It's Indiana Oaks and Derby Day on Saturday. 11th race on the card is the Indiana Oaks. Jeff, let's take that as your first shot at Horseshoe Indianapolis, I think, for the season on the podcast.
Right. I've never been there either, although I've driven past.
I've been to Hoosier Park, but I have not been to Horseshoe Indianapolis.
I drove past it once. I was driving from Indianapolis to Cincinnati, I think it was, and I was just driving in the middle of nowhere. It seemed like, and all of a sudden there's a racetrack on my left side of my car. I said, wait, what is this? That was a few years back, but a nice track, at least from the outside. And we're looking at a grade 3 race here with a $200,000 purse. I actually was somewhat impressed with Interstate Daydream and her win at the Black Eyed Susan, because I really liked Adair Manor that day, who I thought was a pretty good filly and still do. And she had every chance to go by this Daughter of Classic Empire from the top of the stretch to the wire. Was never going to catch her. Interstate Daydream had a good trip. It's a good stalking trip, which I like to see. Keeps her free and clear of trouble. She's only had the 5 starts, so I would think that this Brad Cox trained filly has further improvement in her. She's won 3 out of 5, never off the board. She's listed at 9-5 in the morning line. I'm not sure you'll get that. So for me, there's no reason to think that this filly can't continue to win. Interstate Daydream to win the Indiana Oaks.
Yeah, I think she'll have this field. And Patna, the other Brad Cox in here, probably the challenger to her. I thought the 7 Runway Wife could be underneath. 5 with the 3-7, the way I kind of saw this one as well. Interesting with Interstate Daydream. Just want to bring this up. The news broke yesterday from the agent Doug Bradar that jockey Florent Giroux, who rides Interstate Daydream at Indianapolis on Saturday night, will be taking his tack to Del Mar. You lose one French pilot on the turf, Flavien Prat in Southern California. You pick up Florent Giroux for Del Mar. Jeff, how do you think he'll fare out there?
Well, I think he'll fare great, especially if he tells everybody he is Flavien Prat. Who would know the difference, right? But no, he'll do really, really well. There was a void left when Flavien left, and now he'll come here. He'll get good business, and I'm sure his reputation as not only just a grass rider, but just a good rider, will carry him through, and he will be in high demand, I promise you. Good move, I think, for him, and I think he will get he'll be hot early, middle, and late, and wouldn't be surprised if he is the leading rider. Although Juan Hernandez is very good as well.
The one thing about Giroux I like is not only is he a turf rider, but he's a speed rider on the dirt, which is like the perfect American combination, right? You want to put your horse into the race, into the front, which a lot of international jockeys don't. But he has developed himself into an excellent front-running jockey. Riding a lot of horses for Brad Cox will do that for you probably because they have a lot of speed. But his aggression, you remember his rides on Work All Week and horses like that back Breeders' Cup time, he'll hustle and get a horse to the front, and that will play well in Southern California, I'm sure. Speed on the dirt and a deft hand on the turf. He should be a good fit. To the 12th race now on the Saturday night program at Horseshoe Indianapolis. It's the first of the derbies that we talk about this coming weekend. The Indiana Derby, grade 3, $300,000 race here. Jeff, 1 mile and a 16th. This is really an achievable distance for just about anybody in their development. We've got horses like Best Actor stretching out to a 1-turn mile to a 2-turn race with Brad Cox and Florent Giroux teaming up there again. Best Actor undefeated, but at 1 mile and a 16th, making your first stakes attempt. Like I said, this is kind of an achievable distance. If you're going to take a horse like this on a class rise this time of year, this isn't a bad distance to give it a shot at. I thought Best Actor had a big chance in here. Who did you like?
I actually went back and watched Best Actors win in the allowance race going a one-turn mile at Churchill. He's undefeated in 2 starts. I like the colt a lot. I was a little bit concerned the fact that he didn't change leads in his last start. I don't think he can get away with that in this race. Then you have Actuator, who I also looked at, and he's got a similar pattern in the sense that, well, I put it this way: they both come off wins at one turn at Churchill, and they were both fast. Actuator, if you look at him, he had a couple of runs last year as a 2-year-old on grass, looked just like another horse. But then he comes off a layoff, joins the Mike McCarthy barn, and his win at Churchill was very visually impressive. He's a big, good-looking colt by Bodemeister. I don't know why he only brought 2,200 as a yearling, but he's a lot better than that. And he's got 2 bullet work showing since that win, which I think is important. He's also had enough time off. And he's not, I wouldn't say he's blazingly quick, but he's got good tactical speed. I wouldn't be surprised if Actuator is right on the lead here. There's others in here that want to go to the front, but I fear him. Having said that, though, Rattle and Roll to me he won the American Derby just a week ago, reeled back. I kind of like this move. I think that Kenny McPeak is capitalizing on a sharp horse right now. He said, he was quoted in the paper saying that the horse came out of the race bucking and squealing and thinks he can come back in a week. And he's run back quickly in the past and done well. Won the Breeders' Futurity back last year as a 2-year-old off a relatively short turnaround. So I don't think that's going to bother him. And I actually like Kuchar in that race in the American Derby, and I thought Kuchar ran better than I thought he was going to run, and he still got beat by Rattle and Roll. Rallied outside and just went on by. I thought that was the old Rattle and Roll. You know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why in a race that should have enough pace to set things up. I think Rattle and Roll can come right back and do it again. So I like Rattle and Roll to beat Actuator and Best Actor in that order. But Rattle and Roll, I think he's back where he used to be, and that's good enough to win.
Yeah, if he's ready to go again, this will be his 3rd race in 4 weeks. He also ran June the 12th in the Matt win. So they're getting their money's worth out of him here. Look, they missed the Triple Crown, right? This was a really good 2-year-old last year. Maybe one of the best 2-year-olds we had in America last year after winning the Breeders' Futurity. Then he went to the sidelines, and it just did not work out, right? I mean, he did not come back, but he seems to be in form now. They missed the big money in the Triple Crown series, so play the lucky hand while they're hot. Lucky 7 Stable was the owner here, and they're going to take their shot. I want to mention, too, Unoho in this race. Now with Robertino Diodoro. This just kind of goes to show the tough life that trainers lead sometimes, Jeff. Ricky Corville was the trainer of this horse, orchestrated the upset at 75-1 in the $1 million Grade 2 Rebel Stakes. 1 start later, he's out. The horse now with Robertino Diodoro. Don't know the particulars behind any of the situations, of course, like that. But trainers live on a day-to-day contract, Jeff. It's not easy when we see some of these horses move barns. I mean, I'm not sure. Again, I don't know the particulars of the situation, but maybe Corville just doesn't want to be licensed in other places. When the horse went to New York last year, it went from Corville to Dutro and then back to him. So maybe he'll get the horse back. But for Diodoro to run this horse in the Indiana Derby, a little bit of a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, I never really believed in this horse, although he did win the Rebel. I'll give him that. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that race. He was 75-1 that day, and then came back in the Arkansas Derby, got no play really at 19-1 and was nowhere. So I'm going to take a wait and see attitude with him. And besides, I think the 3 that I do like, again, I'll mention them in order: Rattle and Roll, Actuator, and Best Actor. I think they're pretty good. They're pretty darn good race horses. It's a tough race. You're going to have to show up to win this race, and for that kind of money, $300,000, it's a legitimate race.
Let's move on now to Prairie Meadows, where we mentioned that Friday night's card has the Iowa Sprint and the Distaff, but Saturday's card is the big one for the racetrack during the season. The Grade 3 Iowa Oaks and the Grade 3 Iowa Derby are both on the program. They go back-to-back races 7 and 8. We've also got that hit and split $2,000 at Prairie Meadows in the late pick 4 on Friday or on Saturday night. So be sure to take part in that. These races part of the sequence. So 7th race on the card, Jeff, the Iowa Oaks Grade 3 mile and a 16th. Prairie Meadows typically a pretty speed-favoring racetrack, especially on these big nights. You want to be pretty close to the lead. Even so, in a race where I think there's a lot of pace in here, Falconet, I know, is your pick in here, should be right up near the front, and that's a good place to be at Iowa.
And she doesn't have to be in front, though, which is why I think that she's handy enough to be sitting second or third if the race flow dictates that kind of trip. She did win her maiden at Keeneland 2 races back, sitting third from the 9-hole in a 9-horse field. That was a good race. She came back and won at Churchill in a 1-turn mile, and she was game that day. She took forever for her to change her leads. Jock had to almost tip her over to the left just to get her to get over. But she still won, and the number was good. It was a career top, and I think she's going to be forwardly placed again, if not on the lead. But if they give her the lead, that's fine too. The other one I looked at was Butterbean, who won the prep race here, and she came from way out of it. It was actually a good trip for her because while she was dead last early, she was way behind everybody else. So she kind of went on her own pace and kind of helped her run, and then finally made a run and blew everybody away. And visually, it was a good race for her. I'm not sure how much she was beating that day, but she's a progressive filly. But I think Falconet, Pletcher, and Castellano, and the fact that she probably has a little more room for upside, not to mention that she's by Uncle Mo, probably tips me towards her. So I'll go with Falconet to win the Iowa Oaks.
Should be a 1-2 type performance there, I think, early and late. Falconet, Butterbean, the two main players in there for the Oaks. To the Iowa Derby we go. Race number 8 on the card Saturday night at Prairie Meadows. Jeff, we've got Rattle and Roll also entered in here. He can't run everywhere. He's going to Indiana. He's not going to Iowa. So you can cross that one off your program as a scratch. Who did you end up with in the mile and 1/16th Iowa Derby for $250,000?
Yeah, see, this actuator who I mentioned in the Indiana race is also entered in this race, but he's not coming. So he'll stay and run in Indiana. He'll run there. Bottom line, though, is Conacher. How do you deal with a horse like this? I mean, first of all, this is his first try around 2 turns. He earned a 104 Beyer number when he won an allowance race through Churchill. The horse that he beat, Gunite, came back to win very nicely to kind of verify the strength of the race. He's won 3 out of his last 4. 2 races back, he won by 6 at sprinting. So he's going to take them as far as he can. He doesn't strike me as being a speed crazy type horse. He's fast, I'll give him that. But you know, he saw him stalk the pace and then draw off the 2 races back. He's clearly going to make the lead, and now it's just a matter, Jeremy, whether he switches off or not. And in 7 furlong race, he certainly looked like he was going easy. I think if he's ever going to get 2 turns, it'll be in his first try. And I think in this race, he makes the lead and runs everybody into the ground over a track that you mentioned kind of favors that style. So I like Conacher to continue to win. He's listed at 4-1 in the morning line. I will take that if I can get it right now. Conacher to win the Iowa Derby.
Yeah, with Rattle and Roll in there and Actuator coming out, obviously the morning lines are going to shift around. Conacher will probably vie for favoritism with Major General, the Todd Pletcher trainee, who would be making, a drop in class from his previous dirt races, right? Pate Mile, Lexington, Tampa Bay Derby, won the Iroquois last year. He hasn't really come back at 3, as he hinted at, too, though. One of the few Todd Pletchers who hasn't kind of moved forward of late. Pletcher's horses are running well around the country right now. Is Major General part of that wake-up call? We'll find out in the Iowa Derby, but a good placement for that horse instead of throwing him back against the Wolves. That's probably a good spot for Major General to try to get right if he can, but Conacher is awfully, awfully fast. Let's go to Belmont Park on Saturday, where we've got that $6,000 hit and split going in the late pick 5, I should say, Saturday at Belmont Park. So we definitely want to give a little extra emphasis to the final 5 races on the card at Belmont on Saturday. 4 stakes races in all graded. The Suburban, the Belmont Oaks Invitational, the Victory Ride, and the Belmont Derby. We will take a look at all 4 of those races. First up, the Suburban, Jeff. It's in race number 4. It's not part of that late pick 5 sequence earlier in the card. $400,000 here. Grade 2, 1.25 miles. Classic distance, not so classic at Belmont in that the 1.25 miles is kind of that elbow start and then a 1-turn race from that point forward. Some names that people know in here, of course, Max Player, Dynamic One, and the Pimlico Special winner, First Captain. It's a good day for Pimlico on Saturday as the Black-Eyed Susan winner, Interstate Daydream, is back in the Indiana Oaks, and the Pimlico Special winner, First Captain, is back running here in the Suburban. Who'd you take?
This was a tough race because you've got the lone speed here with Todd Pletcher and Untreated on the rail, who set really slow fractions in the Pimlico Special and hung on for third. He kind of inherited the lead that day and will probably inherit the lead again, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Dynamic One, who is the other Pletcher. So now, if you're in the in the walking ring with Todd, he's going to talk to Rosario and say, "Now look, you're the only speed in the race.
Right.
So I want you to go, and I want you to set the fractions and steal the race." Now, Irad, you're on my other horse, and you see that other horse? My other horse, he's the only speed. So you got to go after him. So
right.
I think Todd can kind of dictate this race. But going a mile and a quarter, I think Dynamic One probably will have the edge. He's coming off a win at Churchill. Numbers-wise, he's fast. First or second, 6 out of 11 time. And he has enough. He may have enough speed to lay fairly close, or maybe not. So this race with the pace situation so volatile, I'm just not sure how to handicap this race, Jeremy. If you have some insight that you can lend to me, I'm all ears, because this is a hard race for me.
Well, again, yeah, like you mentioned, I think he who sits second has a real shot in here. It's just a matter of figuring out who that could possibly be. Every once in a while, Max Player will show a little pace, and at other times just drops completely out the back end. Forewarned is going to be out the back. First Captain is kind of interesting. Maybe First Captain shows a little bit more speed, right? This is a horse who was a length or two off of it in the Carter sprinting. So if Luis Saez is aggressive and First Captain can kind of sit there glued second to Untreated, I think he passes him again like he did in the Pimlico Special. And again, the splits were not fast in the Pimlico Special at all, very slow. So I kind of like First Captain's chance in here. He did win the Dwyer over this racetrack last year. Also won a sloppy allowance race and then a fast track race. He's 3 for 3 at Belmont. So I liked First Captain. Maybe I got a little grudge against Dynamic One because I needed him bad in the Ben Li. he ran a good second that day. He could not get the scalding. Shug's horse ran away from him on the back end. Dynamic One ran a good one. Now he came back and really ran a nice race in the Blame next time out, and that Blame was a legit grade 2, grade 3 race. It was only 190 grand or whatever it was, but Proxy was in there. Scalding, who just beat him in the Ben Li, he got revenge on him that day. Dynamic One, certainly it will be interesting tactically to see how the two Pletchers are ridden and how they perform in this spot. And also should mention with Dynamic One, you mentioned Irad's riding him, and he'll get the instructions on what they want to do. Irad back from his 5-day suspension. So you didn't see Irad in the entries last weekend. He's back in the saddle. So that will certainly have a major influence on the tote board on the New York circuit this weekend. And of course, Bob Baffert back from his suspension on that was reciprocated from the California authorities. Of course, the suspension handed down by the Kentucky Racing Commission and was reciprocated around the country. Bob Baffert back in the entries this weekend at Los Alamitos. So Irad and Baffert back, certainly influential. No matter what you think of either character, what they did, or their suspensions, the validity of them, or whether they should have been longer, shorter, whatever. We can say this with Irad Ortiz and Bob Baffert, they are going to be major influences on the turf board, on the tote board coming up this weekend. No question about that. To the 7th we go. It's the Belmont Oaks Invitational, grade 1 here, a mile and a quarter on the turf and the Belmont Oaks Invitational. Jeff, we've got a good international cast coming in, but some good American horses in here. You know, McCulloch is awfully good. Cairo Memories, Howdy, Consumer Spending. The Americans in here, and even New Year's Eve has done nothing wrong, winning 3 of 4. The American fillies in the 3-year-old turf division look like they have a chance maybe to hold their ground a little bit, but the international cast is always tough in these kind of races when you're going a mile and a quarter on the grass. Did you go domestic or did you go international?
I went with Cairo Memories, California shipper. She is really, really good. And if you look at her form, 7 starts, but 2 of those were on the dirt, and she's absolutely no dirt horse. She won her first 2 starts as a 2-year-old. I gave her a little bit of a decent look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. She broke bad and got off bad and was way out of it. Really didn't get a good trip. Only got beat a little less than 3 lengths. It's actually a pretty good race if you want to know. But her two recent races here at Santa Anita, the Providencia and the Honeymoon, I love them both. One of the races she made the lead, set slow fractions and kick clear. And the next race she pressed the pace and won by a length and a quarter. But the value for that win was much greater than that. She was breezing all the way. It was only asked to run the last 50 yards or so, quickened real nicely, and trained very well since. She's inside draw in a race that probably will be run pretty slowly the first part. And Cairo Memories is the kind of filly that doesn't pull. She can go as fast or as slow as you want her to go. I think Mike Smith might put her on the lead from the 2-hole. And if they don't respect her, this is a filly that absolutely could go all the way. I mean, she really could. She's that good. Now, there are others in here from Europe. I've tried to evaluate the European fillies. I don't think this is a banner group. There's some nice ones here for sure, but there's no monsters. And I think given the race shape and given how good I think Cairo Memories is, I'm not going to pick against her. I think she's got a really, really good chance to wire the field.
I picked her last year in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. I love that turn of foot that she has. She really gets over the ground good when she gets rolling. See how she translates that to Belmont. Haughty's a horse who I think has star potential for Chad Brown. She won the Penn National Oaks last time in what was really an easy, almost like, just a free payday, $90,000 for the winner's share of that one in almost a public workout in the return race. I think she could be set up to run a good one as well. Haughty, Cairo Memories, two Americans to keep close eyes on in the Belmont Oaks Invitational Grade 1 race. There we go to the Victory Ride, Grade 3, race number 8 on the card. Maybe you look at a rolling daily double, 7th to race 8. Jeff, the Victory Ride is for the 3-year-old filly sprinters, a prep for the test stakes coming up at Saratoga over 7/8 of a mile, coming up during the spa meet. July or test might be in August, but let's see who can get there via the Victory Ride.
Smash Ticket is a filly that I remember from last year. She was second in her debut to Wicked Halo, 10 clear of everybody else. That's a salty maiden race at Lone Star, wouldn't you say? And then she comes out of that race, comes to California, wins by 5. I mean, you could not look any better than she looked in that race. She made the lead inside, which was not the place to be. She drew off under wraps. I mean, it was just a fantastic race. 6-5 in the Sereno in her next start. Got absolutely eliminated at the start. Got beat, finished far back and was hurt, injured. Came back, saw her race at Lone Star in an 11 length allowance win, just kind of toying with the field. Only ran the last 16th of a mile and didn't even do that. I mean, she was coasting. So now she shows up in Belmont again. And this is a very high quality sprinting filly by Midnight Loot. And there's not a doubt in my mind that if she runs back to her best race, she will beat this field. I like Smash Ticket to win the Victory Ride, going 6.5. Quality filly, off the beaten path a little bit from Lone Star, but I think she'll make her mark in New York.
Yeah, Todd Fincher's had some really good horses at Sunland Park, Pepper's Pride, and et cetera over the years. A good West Texas trainer there, New Mexico, and he's been around some good horses, so do not be surprised with Jeff's pick there, Smash Ticket, if this one fits very well in New York. Let's go to the Belmont Derby Invitational, 1.25 mile Grade 1 race for a $1 million purse. Race number 9 on the card Saturday at Belmont Park. And again, part of that $6,000 late pick 5 hit and split. You've got to handicap this late pick 5 with $6,000 in additional cash that's going to be split up. You separate yourself from the pack and become one of just a few winners on the Express Bet or First Bet platforms to hit that late pick 5. You could be divvying up a big slice of the pie. This race also, the Belmont Derby Invitational, is the Express Bet race of the week. You can get my full analysis of this race in the Express Bet email newsletter. Sign up at expressbet.com for that. Also posted in the blog sections at both First Bet and Express Bet. Jeff, I went with Stone Age in here. I'm looking for a repeat for Aiden O'Brien and Ryan Moore. They came and won this race last year with Bolshoi Ballet. This is just a 1.25 mile specialist. The 1.25 mile races for Stone Age have been off the charts. And the fact that he was only 7-2 odds in the Epsom Derby last time and running 6-17, the results not what they wanted, but the fact that he had that kind of respect in that kind of race, I thought Stone Age was the horse to beat in here. Did you go with one of the international horses, or are you staying on the domestic shores?
I'm going to stay at home here, but before I mention my top selection, Tiz the Bomb, and why I like him, I did look at Stone Age very carefully. Um, to me, he is the best of the Euros in the race. It took a while for him to break his maiden, which kind of surprised me, but he was running in Group 1 races, and that probably says more than anything that Aidan O'Brien thought of him of being of that quality. Here I have a couple of reservations here. First of all, both of his wins, while visually very pleasing, were accomplished in wire-to-wire fashion. He was able to make the lead. Now, I don't know if he's a need-the-lead type or not, but he did get loose on the lead in both races, and I think that kind of made things a little easier for him. Now, when he won at Leopardstown 2 races back, he was really, really good that day, even though he wasn't in front. And that was the reason why he was so well back in the Epsom Derby. Now, in the Epsom Derby, he got a great trip. He sat third, saving ground on the inside behind the leaders. He could not have drawn it up any better than that. And then when he was put to pressure in the stretch, he just got outfooted. However, Desert Crown is a monster. The third place horse, Westover, came out of there and won the Irish Derby like a monster. So those horses are infinitely better, I think, than he's facing here. The problem, though, for me, Jeremy, is the 13 hole. I don't know what kind of trip he's going to get from out there and whether or not he's going to be able to get over. I mean, I'm sure they'll send a manual. I'm sure. Now, if you told me he was going to get over and make the lead, I'd say, okay, he wins.
Not in this race. Not with Classic Causeway and Emmanuel in here.
You wouldn't think so. So
I would not think a Euro is making the front.
You wouldn't think so. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned about Stone Age, even though I recognize that he is the best of the Euros and more than capable of winning. Now, as far as Tiz the Bomb is concerned, it's hard for me to believe until I looked it up, but it's right there in the form. Tiz the Bomb has not raced on turf since he finished second to Modern Games in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last November. Now, Modern Games, who was so impressive in that race, came this year. All he's done is win the French 2000 Guineas and then run third when the distance got to him in the French Derby. So that is a monster horse, better than any horse he's facing here, I think. Right. And Tiz the Bomb, after failing on the Dirt in the Holy Bull, I thought he ran well in the Battaglia. I certainly thought he ran well in the Jeff Ruby Stakes when he beat Tawny Port and Rich Strike. That form is held up.
That race has come back okay.
Yeah. Stolen Grace, who was in that race, came out of that race, won the American Turf at Churchill Downs. And he won that race very nicely. And I'll tell you why, because he was fairly close to the pace. He wasn't some deep closer who, tagged tiring speed. He was wide every step of the way and came away like a good horse. He didn't run that badly in the Kentucky Derby for a horse that I'm fairly convinced doesn't like dirt. He got beat 12 lengths, took a lot of dirt in his face, ran well. Okay, fine. Since then, look at his works. He's got a nice works, a couple of breezing, sharp works. I think he's going to settle in the middle. And if he comes back and runs as well as he did in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, which was a marvelous race, especially going 1.25 miles, which I think will be well within his wheelhouse, I think Tiz the Bomb can uphold the American flag here and win this race. And I think Tiz the Bomb's going to beat the Euros. And I think with a good trip and a decent pace to chase, I think Tiz the Bomb finds a way to win. So for me, Tiz the Bomb to beat Stone Age in a terrific edition of the Belmont Derby Invitational.
The beer could taste really cold for Kenny McPeak this weekend, right? I mean, he's got Rattle and Roll going in the Indiana Derby for a big pot. He's got Tiz the Bomb here for a big pot. And to steal the phrase from the late, great Orioles play-by-play announcer Chuck Thompson, ain't the beer cold? It would be for Kenny McPeak if he can pull off both of those victories with his star 3-year-olds. That's going to wrap up our 10 stakes handicapping journey around the country for this week's First Call podcast. Couple scheduling notes I want to hit with you. Again, Los Alamitos has its Derby Day on Saturday because of the Equibase power outage. That race drew after the power outage, and past performances weren't able to be produced by some of the different vendors. That outage is causing a little bit of problems too with with some of the data on the Express Bet and First Bet products, and all the ADWs, frankly, are going to have today. So please be patient with that. Pass that along there. Hopefully that the power situation after the lightning strike in Lexington is going to be resolved shortly, and we can be resuming full data capabilities. But we weren't able to really to preview the Los Alamitos Derby because of that today. Wanted to let you know that Sunday is closing day at Los Alamitos, so there'll be mandatory payouts there. Next week, there is no racing in Southern California. In fact, the only racing in California on the thoroughbred side will be at Sacramento, because Pleasanton's closing day is this Sunday in Northern California. So also be a mandatory there at Pleasanton on Sunday. Sacramento kicks up next Friday. So the only racing in California next week will be at Sacramento for the thoroughbreds. Also want to let you know, too, Colonial Downs of Virginia, their expansive turf course and great turf program there. Their opening day is Monday. So by the time we talk to you again next Thursday, Colonial Downs will be up in action. So 4 stakes races for Virginia breds on the opening day card Monday at Colonial Downs. So be sure to check that out. Watch and wager with First Bet and Express Bet. No handicapping tournaments this weekend on the platform. We've got a couple coming up a week from Saturday. And of course, Saratoga is going to open next Thursday. So we'll talk some Saratoga for you next week on the podcast. And want to remind you that the Fun in the Sun handicapping contest, our popular Saratoga Del Mar tournament, it's a weekly Saturday handicapping tournament, begins July 23rd. So mark your calendars for that. Just $125 to play each Saturday. $25 in entry fee, $100 in live money. You make $10 win bets. Win your way to the final table on September 3rd. You'll be playing for 5 digits in cash on that Labor Day weekend. So Fun in the Sun, one of our real popular, kind of like Beat the Host. It's one of our 2 big popular low roller handicapping tournaments that we run as a series throughout the course of the summer. Of course, Beat the Host in the winter time. But Fun in the Sun, July 23rd is the opening weekend for that. Jeff, that wraps up everything we've got to say. I think go ahead and send people out. Tell us what you're looking forward to.
The whole weekend is good. And racing in New York, we mentioned Prairie Meadows, Indianapolis, Horseshoe Indianapolis, which I believe is in Shelbyville. Is that correct? Is that the little
That
town?
is correct, yes.
Okay. I whizzed right through Shelbyville on my way to Cincinnati. I didn't know where it was.
Go from Indianapolis to Cincinnati. Sounds like you were basketball hopping there. That sounds like
Actually,
a tournament.
It was the it was the 2000. And I believe it was the 2008 NCAA tournament at Indianapolis.
That sounded like it. Okay, yeah. Those 2 cities.
I was on my way home early because my Bruins were defeated by, I believe it was Florida that year in the semifinals. Might have been the finals. I'm not sure. I've kind of forgotten. It's been a while. But anyway, yeah. So I was glad to see a racetrack, even though I didn't even know I was en route to a racetrack. But I'm driving down the freeway to Cincinnati, and there it is on the left-hand side of the freeway. I'm saying, God, I wish they were open, but they weren't. Well, that's my experience with a racetrack who's undergone a name change like 3 times now. But Horseshoe Indianapolis, good racing there. And then Delaware Park, your old stomping ground, or one of them anyway. Good racing there as well. So good gambling, good racing as we await the opening next week of Saratoga.
All right, that puts a wrap on this week's First Call podcast. Be sure to join Jeff and I on Tuesday for It's Official, where our video podcast will recap the 5 big topics of the previous weekend. And exciting news, this is our final Thursday edition of the First Call podcast. We move to Fridays beginning next week, so be sure to check that out next Friday, where not only can you get us in your regular podcast audio channels, we will have a video edition with weekend previews, stakes previews. We're going to look at the XBTV workout library, key race replays. So we're taking it a little next level in year, I guess we're in year 3 or 4 of the podcast here. So First Call moves to Fridays next week. That gives us a little more time for production, but more importantly, it gives us a chance to look at Sunday stakes races as well, because typically Sunday stakes races enter on Thursdays. So as we record here on Thursday, we took a look at only Saturday races for the most part. by going to the Friday draw or to the Friday production day for the First Call podcast. We'll not only be able to put in some more video elements and things like that, but we'll have Sunday racing information for you as well, as there are key stakes races on Sunday throughout the summer at Saratoga and Del Mar. So be sure to check that out. We'll talk to you in 8 days next Friday on the First Call podcast. Good luck, everybody.